Welcome back to Custom Cards, where we take a look at some of the best designs from the Custom Magic subreddit. I'm Andrew, and let's jump into it. This week, we have no meme cards and no shoutouts, so we are just going straight to the top 5. And our number 5 this week is Deny Progress. It costs 1 and a white for an instant. Counter target spell with converted mana cost greater than the number of lands you control. Okay, so it costs 2 mana, so say it's turn 2 and you went second. So it's the opponent's turn 3. You can counter anything? Well, no, only if they play a 3 mana spell. I do think white should get more counter spells. However, I'm not sure that this is the design. It is encouraging you to play very few lands, which can shoot yourself in the foot. Now, if you're building this if you're putting this in a constructed deck and you've built the deck such that you need very few lands, maybe it's a red-white deck and you're using that new guy who bounces a land to your hand every time he hits the opponent. That could be a decent combo, but it's a design space that incentivizes you to hurt yourself, which is not necessarily a place that you want to go. So, while I like the idea behind it, I honestly think it might be better if it were counter target spell with converted mana cost less than the number of lands you control. That way, it incentivizes you to do something that you already want to do, and it's weaker early and stronger late, which is how cards are kind of supposed to work in general. Our number 4 this week is Free Speech Advocate. It costs green-white for a creature, Human Advisor. It is a 2/2 with Vigilance, and spells and abilities can't be the target of spells or abilities. Well, that's kind of cool. So clearly this mostly stops like counter spells from countering your spells or abilities. I guess technically it would also stop like rebound effects, things that copy spells. It seems like a pretty cool hate bear, which would generally be mono white, but not being able to counter things is more green than white. So I can see this in green-white, and of course Vigilance is in both colors. So this is a pretty interesting design, and it's one of those, like, it's a hate bear, so it's very meta dependent. Is it going to affect your opponents? That really depends on their deck. Yeah, so this seems like a very solid hate bear for blue decks that have a lot of counter spells, or just main deck it in a counter heavy meta. Number 3 is Restore Ideals. It costs white for a sorcery that says exile target blue creature, black planeswalker, red enchantment, or green artifact. I'm struggling to understand this card. I think that each color it's trying to choose a card type that color is known for not liking. Blue is known as the spellsiest of the colors. It uses the fewest creatures. Black isn't known for not using planeswalkers, but it is known for being the color that kills them. So that's fair. Red tends to, red has enchantments, but once again, actually here, enchantments are red's weakness because it cannot remove them, which is the opposite of black being able to remove planeswalkers, and that being why that's chosen. And then green is artifacts, and green is also known for removing artifacts. And I guess it's meant to be more flavorful. No, I don't know. Like, green flavorfully does not like artifacts for the most part. I don't know. It's an interesting card, I'll give it that. But is it useful? White can exile all of these, except I don't know that it's done planeswalkers except as like an O-ring effect. But it does have like disenchant that can get rid of enchantments or artifacts, and of course like Path to Exile that can deal with creatures. But this is just such a weird effect, and it's going to be hard to remember which permanent do you get to exile based on which color. Nobody's going to remember that until they've played with the card a lot, and it's just confusing. So while it's an interesting design and cool, I'm not sure that this needs to see print. Although, again, it's interesting, and I like interesting design space. Here we have Tax Return, another white card. It costs 1 and a white for an enchantment with cumulative upkeep white. At the beginning of your upkeep, if this permanent is on the battlefield, put an age counter on this permanent. Then you may pay white for each age counter on it if you don't sacrifice it. Is that really the reminder text for cumulative upkeep? No. It's at the beginning of your upkeep, put an age counter on this permanent, then sacrifice it unless you pay its upkeep cost for each age counter on it. So yeah, they're just unnecessarily complicating the cumulative upkeep text. Then the main ability is remove an age counter from Tax Return to add colorless. Okay. Let's think about this. So let's say you play this turn 2. Turn 3, you untap. You pay a white, leaving you with 1 untapped land. You play your 3rd land. So now you have 2 mana for turn, and 2 more if you remove the age counter from tax return, which gives you 4 mana on turn 3 in white. And you can do that every turn. And in fact, you probably should remove the age counter every turn, because otherwise you're going to be losing mana on the exchange. So yeah, basically, yes, this is a terrible top deck, but most ramp cards are. That doesn't make them bad cards. So what I'm reading this as is it's just good ramp in white, and that feels wrong. And like, I know that white needs ramp, and I know that, we saw Smothering Tithe last year. That was very good ramp in white, but at least it was a tax effect, which is white. This one, you're paying for it, but you're getting more out of the deal. And that feels green. So maybe I'm wrong because the comments on this card do not seem to be addressing this issue. Well, let's think about it again. Let's exchange this card with Rampant Growth. Turn 2, you play it, you pay 2 mana, and then boom, you're up a land. And so on your turn 3, you play a land, and now you have 4 mana, and you have an extra mana for the rest of the game, basically. This is what this card is doing as well. Yes, it's a bit more convoluted in how it's doing it. Much more convoluted, in fact. And I mean, you can even stack up the counters and then remove them all at once to get a bigger burst of mana on one turn, even though you'll have to pay more mana for the privilege of doing that. At its base, I would say most used scenario. You're playing at turn 2, which makes it a white Rampant Growth with upside and downside, but mostly just Rampant Growth. So the question is, do I think that Rampant Growth in white is okay? No, I don't think so. Wizards does not even print Rampant Growth in standard sets anymore, which tells you something about its power level. So I feel like this card is definitely too strong. Maybe at 3 mana it would be okay. I get that we want to give white ramp because, every color needs some ramp in EDH, but also I'm just not sure that this is cutting it for me. And our number 1 card this week is the Murder Cycle. It is 5 cards, 1 for each color, where each color uses 2 abilities from that color, but you can entwine them with black, and it emulates the effect of the card Murder. Now, you've heard me complain in the past about using 2 in-color effects together to achieve an out-of-color outcome. But these are okay because in order to get both of those effects, you must pay the entwine cost of black, which then lets you remove the creature because if you have black mana, that's something you're allowed to do. Our white card is Send to Elsewhere. It costs 1 and a white for an instant that says choose 1. Exile target creature, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control at the beginning of the next end step. So that's a flicker. Or until end of turn, if a creature would enter the battlefield and it wasn't cast, exile it instead. Okay, so that's a Containment Priest ability. So those are both white abilities. And then Entwine for black. So you end up paying 1 white-black to exile any creature, and that'll be permanent. And then also, if any other creatures would happen to enter the battlefield this turn without being cast, exile it instead. So, cool design. This is a perfectly serviceable card. Flicker tends to cost 1 mana, so making it cost 2 to get some upside, great. The Containment Priest ability itself was 2 mana for also getting a 2/2. So, losing the 2/2 body, but gaining some upside, well costed. And then Entwine, you're paying 1 black-white, which is kind of a more restrictive cost than 1 black-black, although that's arguable, for effectively Murder with some minor upside. That's all very fair. Next up, Vanish from Memory, which is 2 and a blue for a sorcery that says choose 1, put target creature on top of its owner's library. Okay, that's just a time ebb, complete with the same casting cost. Or target player mills 6 cards. Okay, that's more expensive. It's going to cost you usually like 2 mana to mill 6 cards. And then Entwine black, choose both if you pay the Entwine cost. So if you pay them both, so if you pay the 2 black-blue, you get to put a creature on top of its owner's library, and then that player will mill 6 cards. I mean, I guess you could make somebody else mill 6 cards, but that seems like a poor choice. So yeah, that's effectively killing the creature and milling an additional 5 cards for the cost of 2 black-blue at sorcery speed. So this actually is weaker than a Murder, but also stronger than a time ebb. And time ebb is Yeah, fine. And then we have the black one. Let's see how that looks, because I would think black murder is just murder. But Fatal Wound costs 1 and a black for an instant that says choose one. Fatal Wound deals 1 damage to target creature and you gain 1 life. Or destroy target creature if it was dealt damage this turn. Another black ability, and of course Entwine black. So if you pay the Entwine, it's 1 black for an instant, just like murder, to kill a creature and gain 1 life. And now the wording on the second mode is very clever here, because this is sneaky. If it said destroy target creature that was dealt damage this turn, the card would not work, because you have to pick targets when you're playing the spell before any of its effects have resolved. What that means is you wouldn't be able to select the creature that you're dealing damage to with Fatal Wound unless it had already received damage from elsewhere. And at that point, what's the point of choosing the first mode? So it's sneaky because you're allowed to target any creature, and then if it was dealt damage this turn, which will happen after the first mode, and then it dies. So good design here. Our red murder is Unstable Transmutation. It costs red for an instant that says choose one. Target creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types permanently. Okay. Or destroy target permanent if it's an artifact. And Entwine 1 and a black. So this is the first one to cost something other than just black. So it's a shatter, but it can also make a thing an artifact, which is a very niche effect. You wouldn't generally have a use for this. I'm sure there's a way. So it's 1 black-red for murder, effectively. Again, the second mode would not work if it just said destroy target artifact. And Pit Match is our green one. It costs 1 and a green for a sorcery that says choose one, create a 2/2 green snake creature token with Death Touch, or choose a creature you control. It fights target creature you don't control, and Entwine black. So this is sort of the most common color pie break that I see, using 2 green abilities. One is a Death Toucher, one is having it deal damage equal to its power to everything, and then boom, you have a green board wipe. Woohoo! But this one is actually fair. So yeah, and all in total, it's 1 black-green to make a 2/2 with Death Touch, and then have it fight a creature that you don't control. So you could actually keep the 2/2 Death Touch if you have it fight something with 1 power. Most of the things you're going to want to remove will probably have more than 1 power, but who knows? Long story short, these are the good version of the color pie breaks that I hate. So really well designed. You can tell there's a lot of attention to details. So good job. I really do like these. They're super cool. And that's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to like, subscribe, and submit your designs to the Custom Magic subreddit. We'll be back next Tuesday to look at some more designs.